They always told me I was the emotional one in the family, the dramatic daughter who took things too personally, who remembered things too clearly, who couldn't let things go even when everyone else had already decided to move on. My name is Claire Bennett, and the truth is, I used to believe them. I thought maybe I was too sensitive, too intense, too nostalgic. But when I learned what my family did to my mother behind closed doors and how they tried to bury her existence like a stain on their perfect reputation, I realized I wasn't the problem. I was the witness. And eventually, I became the reckoning. My mother, Abigail, was the black sheep of the Bennett family. She married my father, Richard Bennett, the youngest son of a powerful Southern dynasty that had made its money in private banking and old land deals. The Bennetts were polished, old money, country club people who smiled through their teeth and cared more about legacy than love. My mother was nothing like them. She was a public school art teacher from North Carolina who wore mismatched earrings, talked about her feelings, and believed that telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, was a form of love. I was 5 when they cut her out. They claimed it was for mental health reasons. They said she'd had a breakdown, that she was unstable, that she took me and left in the night. I remember that night. I remember my mother shaking as she drove us through a thunderstorm, whispering, "They're trying to take you from me." I was too young to understand. She raised me alone after that, with hand-me-down furniture, paint-stained hands, and late rent notices. I only saw my father a few times a year. He always said, "One day you'll understand." When I turned 27, I received a letter from my mother's best friend. It came with documents, copies of psychiatric evaluations, legal letters, and a tape recording. My mother had been gaslit, manipulated, and wrongfully committed for 3 weeks by the Bennetts. They used a private clinic, paid off the doctor, and claimed she was a danger to me. It wasn't true. She had postpartum depression. She asked for help. They called her unfit. And when she wouldn't sign custody over to my father, they had her declared unstable. She escaped, took me with her, and spent the next 2 decades trying to rebuild a life that had been stolen. The tape changed everything. It was a phone call between my grandfather, Charles Bennett, and the doctor. He said, "Just enough paperwork to keep her quiet. We don't need a scandal. She's not a Bennett. She doesn't know how to lose quietly." That's when I decided I'd never be quiet again. I changed my last name back to Bennett. Moved back to Atlanta under a different identity. Got a job at a nonprofit dealing with medical ethics and slowly began networking with the same people my family relied on. I learned who their lawyers were, who their donors were, what foundations they chaired. Over the next 3 years, I collected every document I could. Their off-the-record donations to private clinics, their influence over certain judges, their board positions at the hospital that certified my mother's stay. And I found the nurse, the one who'd seen everything. Her name was Lucy. She remembered my mother. Remembered how calm she was. How she begged to call someone. How she never should have been admitted. Lucy had been 23 at the time. Now she was willing to talk. I recorded our interview. Then I built a file. 50 pages. Audio clips. Paper trails. Affidavits. Then I sent it, anonymously, to a local journalist who specialized in legacy family corruption. The story hit like a grenade. Bennett family accused of coercing psychiatric hold to erase daughter-in-law. The public reaction was immediate. There were calls for investigations. The hospital launched a probe. Charles Bennett resigned from 3 boards. My father, who by then had remarried and built a sparkling reputation as a philanthropist, released a vague statement about the complexity of family matters. But it wasn't enough. So I gave the journalist the second file, the one with the phone call. My grandfather's voice saying, "She doesn't know how to lose quietly." That line became a headline, a meme, a war cry. I finally revealed my identity, the daughter, the witness. The one they couldn't erase. Interviews followed. My mother, now retired and living in Asheville, cried when she saw the news. People sent her letters, flowers, support. Then came the class action suit. Dozens of women who'd been wrongly held at the same clinic came forward. Some had lost custody. Others had lost years. The Bennetts paid a quiet settlement to avoid criminal exposure. I declined my portion. I asked for something else. The deed to my great-grandmother's house, the only Bennett property my mother ever set foot in. They signed it over. I moved in, repainted it in my mother's favorite colors, hung her art in every room. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. Sometimes it speaks in headlines and court records and repainted walls. They tried to erase her with ink and lies. I brought her back with truth and fire. If you believe in truth reclaiming legacy, hit like and subscribe. We tell real feeling stories where silence turns into strength every day.